Hello, 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 and welcome to the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Zadlin. How's it going, man?
So Ben, I'm at the beach with a bunch of my friends, and they all decided to go to the beach while I did this podcast, which I'm thrilled about. But I'm extremely nervous of having the rain come in because if they do, then I'm going to have a live audience, and it's like 9 people who will be watching me do this podcast. So thank you for the good timing, and let's hope that we keep this within a pretty decent 40-minute range today.
Although I do want to see like the change in your facial expression when you realize people are watching you. I think that would be a lot of fun of being like, all right, does he sound differently? Does he like act differently when he knows he has people watching him? I think that would be a nice little twist for our audience.
I'm petrified of us all being together tonight. And after dinner, they're like, "We should pull up Garrett's podcast on YouTube." And we're like, "No, no, 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 no."
My brothers-in-laws have threatened to do that, and I'm like, absolutely not. We are not doing this right here. Absolutely not. And they'll start it in a different room, and I just hear my voice like, no, all right, we're shut that off immediately. You can listen to that, watch that whenever I am not here.
When it's other people, when strangers, when it's actual fans of the sport, it's
Yeah,
different. I don't know why. I don't know why it's family and friends. Why it would be different. Like I'm not even ashamed that I do this or anything like that. It's
no,
just
no,
I don't
no.
know why it'd be different. So yes, fun little tidbit.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about our team rankings again. We're going to be going from the teams ranked at 21 all the way down to 16. Before we get to that, though, we did have a lot of movement on our ratings and reviews. We got 2 new on Spotify and 2 new on Apple. I think we're up to, what is it, 167 on
On
Spotify?
Spotify, yeah.
And we are up to 95 now on Apple. And we got a review that said, good insight. Always impressed that you guys get the scoop on transfer and coaching changes. Enjoy the banter and the focus on the college scene. So I think they kind of like summarized what we're good at in a nutshell, pretty much
That's
at
very
this
good.
right
Yeah,
point.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we know that you listen to the podcast, so thank you. I appreciate it. All right, team rankings. Let's just riff. Let's have some fun with this. We're going through spots 21 to 16, men and women. And where did you want to start on the 21 side?
Let's start with the men's side, and we have the Eastern Kentucky Colonels coming in at that number 21 spot. A team that I've been very familiar with, obviously competed against in college while we were in the same conference. A team that has traditionally always leaned on steeplechase heavy talent, and this year is no exception. A lot of steeplechase talent that has also been very strong on the grass. What do you like about this team? I think this is one of the highest rankings we've given an Eastern Kentucky team, at least during the preseason rankings in a good while.
Yeah, I mean, they returned a lot of their core scorers, like is it Taha El Rue, if I'm saying that right? He's been kind of like showing flashes of being this like low stick, and he did it a little bit last fall. I think you're going to be able to get, a lot of scoring out of Justin Kiprotich, their new. Is it Kipkovic or Kiprotich? I'm
Kipkoech.
not sure yet. Okay, but he's run 738 in the 3K, 332 for 1500. And I just feel like with a lot of the core depth returning, with a lot of their steeplechasers developing and continuing to find success and then coming over, this team is not as bad as what they were at the national meet where they finished
No.
dead last. I mean, that was a fluke day. And I still think a lot of their core scores are really solid. And I think they only got better. So I think 21 was appropriate given how ugly last year's national meet went. But they did very clearly get better.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the PRs of the guys that they have. I mean, Kipkoech is just stunning PRs across the board, and someone who we could have absolutely ranked too low. He could come in and just be a true low stick. I mean, you mentioned Al Rui, Muhammad Johari, also capable of being like a top 2, top 3 runner for this team. And then an X factor, I think, in my mind, is Ahmed Kadri. Like this
Mm.
guy is one of the most versatile runners in the NCAA. When he's at his best, he can do so much. And he is, if he can kind of round into form on the grass, he could be a kind of a sneaky good back end scorer You have the steeplechasers returning from last year of Christian Imroth and Keaton
Hmm.
Thorsbury, who's been around in the program for a long time. Wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of take one last step forward and be someone that, at least on a good day, could maybe fill in that fifth scoring spot. And Imroth, I think, has the potential of being even more than that if he really rounds into form this fall.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. So it's all like it's a bunch of guys who are good,
Mhm.
and then Kiprotich or Kipkowic, whoever, Justine.
Yeah.
Try my best here with these names. I know I stink at them all the time, but um, yeah, it's a bunch of guys who are just across the board good. Some have the potential to be great. Some maybe are great, but at the very least, it's a complete collection. Um, I don't know if they're going to be like. What do you think their ceiling is?
I mean, if things hit, I think they could be like 12th, maybe 11th. I think they actually have a decent ceiling because I mean, let's say coach is actually like a true low stick and he becomes like a top 10 15 runner. You could put together a case that they have like a couple top 100 guys, and you could be looking at them all of a sudden scoring 500 points at the national meet, and I don't think that's a unreasonable ceiling for them.
Okay, I don't know if I'm quite that high. I think I'd maybe come back to 15 ish. So, which is, we're talking a couple spots there, but okay, I get behind that. But let's go to a program that's a little different here,
Yeah.
and that is Oklahoma State. Um, they're at 21. They were a podium team last year. They lost Taylor Rowe, Molly Bourne, Gabia Gavadite, and they returned Bila. And they return a bunch of nice support scores, but they lose who? They lost Heidi DeMio as well. I think they bring back Auerbach. I don't know, but it is. Does it feel wrong to place them at 21? It feels wrong, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we're talking about we're entering a kind of a different era for Oklahoma State, and I'm not even saying that like, hey, this is where they're going to be for long in terms of like this
Right.
is the new era of where they're going to be ranked. It's just a new era in terms of the women that are going to be scoring for this team. We've had the Taylor Rose, the Molly Bournes forever for it seemed like forever on this team, and all of a sudden they're going to be gone, and it's just going that you have Jep Curry to kind of lead the line, which I think is huge. But then you have just a lot of women who haven't needed to score for this team or even be in the top 7 for this team in years past because of the depth that they've had in previous seasons. And so I think you're going to be looking at a lot of unproven returners who certainly have I think the potential to step in and kind of shine in a way that they weren't given a chance to in years past. But it is I think it's going to be a year where hey, just get some national meet experience for a lot of these women, and next year I think they're probably gonna add a lot more, whether it's through international transfer portal or recruiting. I think this team is going to look a lot different, but I think Coach Dave Smith is going to be able to see hey, who are the women that I can count on next year is going to be probably his main target.
Yeah. The one thing that scares me about this team is Victoria Lagat, who was kind of didn't really race much at all. I think she ran like once last fall and then was gone. Didn't see her much at indoor track. She had a few decent races here or there, but then she ran 15:45 in the 5K. And I'm like, ooh, that's a pretty good time. That's like pretty solid. Like that's a time that makes me think like, should be a low stick. And I'll actually offer a rumor that I heard. I've not verified this. It's just been from one source. I'm not reporting anything, but I had heard that it's possible that Chip Curie may sit out this fall. She may not race for X time. I don't know if that's true. If it was, I think I would be more, I would report it. But um, if she's not, then unfortunately, this team's not being ranked at all.
No.
And if they are, it's Dave Smith's like best coaching job.
Well, and truthfully, I mean, like everything that I just said, it makes sense for Jeb Curry to redshirt, right? I mean, like in terms of hey, if this year is all about how can we be at our best next year, then hey, we already know Jeb Curry's a great runner. Like we don't need to waste her eligibility in a rebuilding and a restocking year. Let's use it when we can actually be a little bit more challenging at the front end of the pack. And so I think, again, we're not reporting anything, but it just, you can kind of connect some dots on why that might be happening.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So I don't know. I'm still scared. I'm still scared. Like I still like no, they're going to be top 15, top 10 team. Like something in the back of my mind is bugging me, and that's how you know you have like a historical dominant powerhouse. And so, um, yeah, we'll see. That team scares me.
I
I
mean,
don't like them.
didn't Dave Smith have several votes for Coach of the Year this past like
Yeah,
outdoor season? Like, I
yeah,
think that just shows you. I mean, it's like it's hard to flip that switch where it's like, all right, this is going from a program that arguably was one of the best, if not the best, during the outdoor season on the women's side, to 21st or like 21st, like in cross country. That just doesn't, cognitively, that there's some dissonance there.
yeah. And that's why I'm scared. So, all right, because I'm so scared, I'm going to move off of this ranking. I'm going to go back to the men's side. Speaking of teams that could very
Lose a lot.
easily burn us, yeah, Syracuse at number 20 on the men's side. They lose Paul O'Donnell. They lose Perry McKinnon. They lose one other name who I'm not thinking of, Nathan Lawler.
Yeah.
They lose Nathan Lawler. McKinnon and O'Donnell were their two best low sticks last fall. Now, admittedly, we did not know O'Donnell was coming back. If we did, that would have changed their preseason
Right.
ranking. But still, Syracuse was way better last fall than we thought they would be. They they lose their two most important runners. They can't possibly burn us again, right?
I
Right?
would think that, but I mean, I've given up with like Syracuse on both the men and women's side. Honestly,
Yeah.
over the last 2 or 3 years, they have been one of the hardest teams to gauge because like we come in the preseason thinking one thing, then all of a sudden in the early season we change our mind to something else, and then at the national meet sometimes we change our mind to finally like maybe where we were at preseason. It always is a roller coaster ride with Syracuse, and I mean this year is setting up to be very similarly. I mean you have Sam Lawler returning as a good front runner for Syracuse. They do bring in Abdinasir Hussein from Oregon, has really good track PRs in the 10K. Uh, he's I mean, would you call him uneven on the grass, Hussein, a little bit, like in
Yeah, I think
terms of that
uneven's the right word. Yeah.
there's potential there. Like, I mean, if he's running at his best, he's a very valuable piece. But when he's not, I don't know how much he's bringing to the table. And I think that you can make a lot of those arguments about the rest of this lineup, which again is why they're kind of a scary team to rank. And I think 20th in a year where, again, we said this a couple times, the back half of the men's rankings were just like, "Ooh, all right,
Oof.
well,
Yeah.
you've been good before, so we'll throw you in there." And so I think this ultimately is a solid spot. I really wouldn't surprise me to see Eastern Kentucky finish ahead of Syracuse. I
Yeah.
think we're giving Syracuse a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt there. But you can just see the options that we talked about in Eastern Kentucky. You maybe have a little bit more faith in than some of the options that Syracuse has in their lineup.
Who's more important for Syracuse this fall? Is it Asaf Harari, the guy who finished 88th at last year's national meet but struggled a bit during the regular season, or at least the lead up to that? Or is it Benny Anderson, the freshman who ran 3:39 for 1,500 meters this past spring?
Whew. I think it's Benny Anderson because I
I
think
think so
he
too.
lifts their ceiling. I think Harari maybe is someone who is very important to their floor. Like if he's not
Hmm.
good, they're gonna be
Yeah,
the bottom could drop out pretty quick. But Benny Anderson, if he's good, he gives them a level of potency in their top four that we weren't expecting after all the losses that they're taking.
I could not have said that better. I think yes, yes. The back of my mind, I'm like, this is all the years that we've trained for. Yes, like so. That's correct. So I agree. I 100% agree. Um, okay, what do you have anything else on Syracuse?
No, no, I think we've outlined the case. I mean, there obviously is potential in this squad, and I think we just need to see who steps up. I think there's probably going to be a name or two that kind of comes in the lineup that we haven't mentioned, and it kind of surprises us. The how good that person is, I think will could be dictate their season and could be their X factor. Let's go on to number 20 on the women's side, and that is the Michigan State Spartans. We had the men kind of in this range as well. What do you like about Michigan State on the women's side?
Um, I think Coach Lisa Bresnow is extremely underrated as a coach. I think she initially came into this program from a team that lost so much firepower, and she's pretty much salvaged a lot of it over
Absolutely.
the last couple of years. She's developed some of the best depth in the NCAA. Like I think they had something crazy, like 11 women in the top 100 at Virginia Invitational last fall. Like it was something crazy deep like that. And when you think about development, like I think in Michigan State, now I think some people are like, well, then why did you rank them only at 20? And it's like, well, they lose Katie Osika, their single most important scorer, and they're
Yep.
only like true low stick. She was an All American, their lone All American. They lose Lauren Freeland, who was a crucial third scorer for them last fall, stepped up in a major way. And then they lose their number 5 in, I think it's
Grace Malloy.
Malloy. Yeah,
Yeah.
Malloy. Now they do bring back Caitlin Hines as a red shirt from a red shirt season, and she was nice in terms of having like being a stabilizing scorer for this team. And McKenna Veen could very easily be a top 50 name in our individual rankings. She's a great talent. She was a great secondary scorer to Osika last fall. And like we know that they have options, and they bring in Rachel Forsyth, the rookie from Michigan, like superstar recruit, and that's great. But I need to see a little more from the depth stepping up to that next level before I think we can comfortably say Michigan is in the top 15.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're worried. My worry, at least with Michigan State, isn't like, hey, will they develop? Will this coaching staff develop enough women to finish like in the top 150 at the national meet? Like, they're going to have, I think, 5 within there. It's what can we see at the front end of their lineup? Is it just going to be like a top 75 score in Veen, or can she step up and be more of a like an All American fringe or All American? This year. Can Forsyth come in and be like a true like top 50, top 60 runner right out of the gates out of high school? I mean, she has the PR, she has the cross country pedigree from high school. I mean, she ran 4:38 in the 16, 10:02 in the 32. Like she's clearly capable. It's just whether or not she can acclimate right away. So that's I think the interesting thing about like Michigan State is I would be stunned if they weren't top 25. But I don't know what that ceiling is. This is a team where it's like I think their range is like 8 spots, and
Hmm.
maybe they are able to like maybe someone takes a step forward more than we expect. But if they don't, I just think the ceiling is so limited on this team,
Yeah.
and that's not necessarily a dig because I think their floor is also very limited. I don't think they're
Yeah.
going to drop very far at all.
Yeah, I completely agree. They're a safe team. They're not
Yes.
exactly like the most exciting team.
No.
Like it's a little like okay, whatever. But the talent. There's still nice pieces that you can piece together. You can at least envision a scenario where they have a complete top 5 or a complete enough top 5. And so I think now that's why people can kind of understand why we were like 20 is a good spot given everything we just said.
Yeah. Is there anybody else that you're kind of keeping an eye on with this team that you think has the potential of maybe breaking out?
Yes, and I had her here, and I don't know where she went. Where is that name? That would be Caitlin Stewart Barnett. That's who I want. The
Yep.
steeplechaser.
Good call
She
out.
was redshirted last year, but she ran 9:48, 9:49 in the steeplechase. She's probably the biggest X factor. She's what makes this team like she's going to be the reason why they're either exciting or why they're just cracking the top 25. You know what I mean? And I think she's going to be baseline strong, but I think the ceiling is what we wonder like, can she be last year's McKenna Veen to Osika? Or can she at least fill, Freeland's role? And so I think with Hines, Freeland, and Stuart Barnett, you have a solid top 3.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good call out. I meant to mention Stuart Barnett as well. So yeah, that's an excellent call. And yeah, I think you can't understate the loss of Katie Osika. She's just been so rock solid up front for this program for so long that it really is a significant loss. But let's move on to number 19 on the men's side, and that is, I think, one of the more interesting teams for us to
Hmm.
rank. This was an ever evolving squad as we were putting together our rankings, and that is, of course, the Colorado Buffaloes. They obviously bring in a brand new coaching staff with Sean Carlson gone, or as Coach Mark Wetmore and Heather Burrows. This is a new era for Colorado under this new staff after all the titles that Wetmore has won, and just the culture that he had created. And in comes a lot of new names. They do lose a lot, namely Austin Vansel, but they do bring in Dean Casey. They bring in Simon Colati. They bring in some interesting names. Like they return Isaiah Givens. This, you could convince me of a lot of different outcomes here. Like
Yeah.
I think Kaladi could end up being like a real impact guy right away coming in from the D2 ranks. I think Dean Casey is primed for a breakout season. But you can also convince me that, hey, they don't have a lot of depth. There's a lot of moving pieces, new staff, a lot of new guys getting acclimated to Boulder. Like you could convince me that they drop to more of the back end of at the national meet rather than where we have them at 19. But I could also see if things click. I think this could be, all of a sudden be a pretty convincing top 15 team. I really don't have a good feel of what this team is going to be.
It's all about framing. It's all about framing. Because if you looked at this, let's just assume none of this happened. Let's assume Carlson stayed at Tennessee and
Right.
all those guys stayed there with him, right? Let's say they do, let's say they still do lose Yassine Abdallah, right? But if I told you at the beginning of the summer, like, hey, Tennessee is going to pair Gene Casey and let's swap out Sanchez with Colati, right? Let's say they're going to pair Dean Casey and Colati with Cole Matheson, the
Yeah.
freshman steeplechaser who was great this past spring, redshirted last fall, and um, and Isaiah Givens. Well, you're going to pair them. You'd be like, hey, that's a sneaky good top four. Like that's a
Right.
really strong top four. You wouldn't know what their ceiling is. You know that it's a very high ceiling, but you wouldn't quite know, are they all going to hit that? Like, because we know that there's more within all four of those guys, but two of them are, well, they're all relatively young in terms of trying to reach that maturation, except for maybe Kaladi. So
Yeah.
I'm a little more optimistic, but I don't know what the back end of this lineup is going to look like, and that's what scares me.
Yeah, I mean, we know like those four names.
Yeah.
I mean, you could throw James Overberg in there as well as a possible kind of last scorer for this team. But I really I think the name that I keep coming back to, and I didn't mention him in my start, but it is Cole Matheson. Like if he has the pedigree, like
Hmm.
a national champ in cross country in high school, had a good, you mentioned, good steeplechase season this past spring. If he can like get to where we thought he could be like last year, like in terms of his potential impact right away, and be like a fringe top 50 guy, then I think this team just goes to another level, and you have that front runner that you need to pair with some other young up and comers. And I think honestly, you could see this just group develop together. Like if you see Casey and Matheson just like take a step forward together, all of a sudden this is a team that's pushing for top 10. Like, but that's a lot of extrapolating out pedigree PRs that we to a level of success that we haven't seen yet.
Before we transition, I am going to say that some of the recruits that they've landed recently and they've brought in, the ones who they've flipped the commitment with, like Jake
Sure.
Liebert, Ethan Edgeworth, like Edgeworth, I think has run like 8:38 for 3,200 meters or
Yep.
something like that. Like
Yep.
he's crazy good. And so I would monitor those guys. Like I think those guys could be really really dangerous. And um, so yeah, that's all I got on Colorado though.
Yep, same here. I think they'll like I said, I think looking at their lineups over the first couple meets that they run will be one of the more interesting teams to look at. Who is filling in that 5, 6, 7 spots for Colorado will be really fascinating. Let's go on to the women's side, and at number 19 we have Wisconsin. This was a tough team to rank. They don't. I mean, they lose a lot. Like there's no easy way of saying that. They do bring in some interesting names. I think Lindsey Cunningham from the D2 level is one that I'm really fascinated. What did you think about her? Like I don't remember her name popping up when we were doing individual rankings, but I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on her transition.
Yeah, I think she's someone who we had in our, want to say, in our just missed individuals, or maybe honorable mention. I think we probably had her in honorable mention, and she probably would have been maybe ranked at the tail end or ranked listed in the just missed if she had actually raced the end of the winter
Yep.
and in the spring, but she didn't. You could tell after her D2 national title in cross that she just wasn't quite as sharp during the winter months in her two races, and then kind of shut it down and we didn't see her again. That left us a little unsure about like what we're going to get. But let's assume that she's in the same version that she was last fall going into this fall. Well, now you have a second low stick, a true low stick, or at least as close to the low stick you can get with maybe not the official
Right.
status, with Willemise. And now all of a sudden, this depth heavy team turns into like kind of top heavy. And it's a very weird dynamic shift because Wisconsin loses. I have all the names here: Alexa Wesley, Danielle Ori, Vivian Hacker, Samantha Stevie, Victoria Heligenthal, and Madison Mooney. That is brutal. Now, luckily, they also bring in women like, I think, Fiona McLaughlin. They bring back Kylie Finger and Bella Jacobson and Emma Watke, which who are respectable back end scores. But the real X factor in all of this. Oh, and I should also mention Carolyn Schultz. She was also very, very strong at the D3 level.
Yep.
She was also coming in. But the X factor in all of this is, do you remember Shea Ruley?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well,
From
she didn't race
Utah,
last fall.
right? Or was she? Did she come?
No, I
No.
don't know.
Has she always been at Wisconsin? I might be thinking of somebody else.
Yes.
Looking it up now.
I do not know whether she was somewhere else earlier, but she was really solid. Like she was at one point a lead scorer for this team in 2022, and she didn't race last fall. I do not know if she's coming back this year. She was listed as a redshirt senior on their 2023 roster, but could she still appeal since she didn't run last fall?
Yeah, no, that's a great point because she gives them another, and I must have been thinking of someone else because I think she's been at Wisconsin this whole time. If she's at her best, you have a three-headed triumvirate that can really, like, maybe they're not all Americans, but they're pushing right
Yeah.
on that range, and all of a sudden that gives them so much such a bigger cushion for that fourth and fifth runners. I it's interesting because yeah, this isn't like a team that is going to rely on depth to win, but it's not. I just am not super convinced in their front end low sticks. Like they just don't provide quite as much oomph as you would want in this kind of team layout. Now I could be wrong. Will Mise is very good, and she could take a step forward. If Cunningham hits the ground running, then those concerns could all look dumb. I just think that's kind of the question mark is like how good are your best runners will
Mm,
kind of be the gauge for this team.
love that narrative. Okay, cool. Let's jump off of Wisconsin. We're going to head to the men's side. 18, Portland. um, this team is exhausting. I hate writing about this team, not because I dislike the team. I actually really like Portland a lot because I love depth, and that's what they have. The thing is that they have so much depth that it makes it impossible to write about them sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, Last year was bad, and the year before that was bad. But we promise that they're good. We promise. Last year they got hit with a string of injuries and illnesses. that is like that's a fact. They did. Like I know for sure that they did, um, and it showed in a lot of their results. The fact that they salvaged a 23rd place finish at last year's national meet was impressive.
Mhm.
And now they bring back a lot of their core scorers. They bring back Strangio, who we think is going to be way better. They bring back Peliquin, who did not race last year. Badrisky, Gertson. They have like a ton of depth pieces.
Estanis Ruiz.
Astonished Ruiz, thank you. He was great, great in the steeplechase this past summer. In theory, this team should be better, but we've also said that for the past 2 years. So, you know.
I mean, picking their like, quite frankly, their 2 through like 7 scores, you can like throw darts and just put pictures up, and you probably have as good of time forecasting that as we are, because they,
Yep.
like you said, they have so much depth. They have so many different names. I mean, like Jonas Gertson is someone that's been around that I feel like has the potential of being a pretty impactful scorer if he's at his best. Ruiz ran 8:21 in the steeplechase this summer. Like, he hasn't really done anything that would suggest he's a great cross country runner, but like 8:21 means you should be at least a top 100 NCAA runner in cross country. I and Peloquin like has shown flashes. It's just been a while since he's really done it. And Strangio I like a lot. Like I think Strangio can be a true low stick. There's just so many question marks, and they have plenty of answers, but will they be like the correct answers when it comes to the NCAA championships? I think that's the hard thing.
I think I think you're onto something, but I would go on to say there's a lot of questions, and they have a lot of different ways that they can answer that
Yes,
question. But what's the most effective
right.
way to answer it? What's the most efficient way? I'm like feel like my sixth grade math teacher all over again right now. But uh, yeah, I mean, and that's it. Like I think in theory and on paper, this is a safe team. You would not have known that going into last year's regional meet. Um, but in theory, they should be pretty safe. So we'll see.
Anything else before we move on to the women's side?
No, let's go to women.
All right. Number
Well,
18 in our rankings is the Furman Paladins. And
oh,
this is a team that brings pretty much everyone back. And they were pretty good last year, finishing 24th at NCAA's, even without arguably their best runner, Bethany Graham, running for most of the season. And now they get her back, presumably, and she has the potential of being a true low stick for this team. I think it all kind of comes down to her, and I think we mentioned this in our article, but it really does. Like, this is a team that absolutely can finish 20th to 30th at the national meet without her. Like, this is like they've proven that they can do that. They have the depth. They don't have anybody that really stands out too much, but they need Graham if they want to be able to finish any higher. And if she can be who we think she can be and be who she's been in the past, being a true All American threat, then this raises their ceiling significantly. And I think they're going to go as high as she allows them to go.
yeah. They do lose Abigail Robertson, who was like a nice middle lineup scorer, and she was really solid and great contributor. I'm not worried. I think they're going to fill that spot
Yeah.
pretty soundly. That's not to say that Robertson wasn't like uniquely impactful, but they just have the options for it.
Yeah.
It's kind of what you said. I'm not going to try to be redundant. It's down to Bethany Graham. We don't know what her fitness is like. She didn't exactly have the greatest spring campaign, but a lot can change from May to October, and so it she's the X factor. Everything kind of revolves around how good this team is, unless this team now takes another leap like they did last year as a
Mhm.
collective group. And in that case, then okay, now they're a top 15 team, even without Graham, right? But you're also betting on a second leap for that to happen is really risky.
And you
And
need it from like the whole pack. You
yeah,
can't
you need it.
you just not just one person. You would need it from like everybody, like that whole pack to just slide up. And that's hard to bank on.
Yeah, and I really like Carly Wilkes and Kaylee Armitage. Like I think they're great, like complementary scores to each other. But at the end of the day, it's Graham. Graham's the low stick, and she kind of needs to be the X factor there.
Absolutely. That's all I got. Let's
Yep.
go to the men's side, and at number 17 we have the Stanford Cardinal. And boy, nothing epitomizes our just shrug emoji of the men's rankings at times better than Stanford, who lose Kai Robinson, who has been their true constant over the last couple of years. And they bring in some good names again in recruiting, like they always do. They have the young twins. They have Cole Sprout, who at his best is like top 20 name, but we just haven't seen that for a while. And then you have Robert DiDonato, who has been very, very good, like a little up and down at times, but like has the potential of being quite serviceable in the top 5 for a very good program. And then we don't really know what else. Like it is true, like truly all over the place. And even those 4 names, you really don't know what you're going to be getting out of this coming fall. Are the Youngs ready to take a big step forward after? I don't want to say necessarily underwhelming freshman campaign, but a one where they didn't hit the ground running as quite as fast as maybe some people expected. I think is fair to say. And then Cole Sprout, like he's been like he's been the reason why we think Stanford can win national championships before, and he's also been the reason why they haven't been on the podium in some years. So what can we expect from him this year in his presumably final year?
I just don't trust this team.
No.
I
How could you?
I don't trust him. I don't know how I could. And I think people see the 17, they're like, oh, gasp. And I go, yeah, I get it. They were what, 8th at the national meet last year? But fun fact, and this was unintentional, we didn't even plan this. If you take out Kai Robinson, guess where they finish? 17. Did not plan that at all. We're just really talented. Anyways, and not only that, everyone's like, well, but you're gonna naturally improve. And what happens if Cole Sprout hits? Fine. But guess what? Last year, leading up to the national, like everything leading up to the national meet, outside of maybe their Pac-12 run, who they beat, what, the 25th place team at the national meet and 2 non-qualifiers. Like it's not like the Pac-12 championship is exactly
No.
stacked last year. Like I'm sure the Mountain West was more competitive in terms of nationally ranked teams. So when you look at like their entire season from the Virginia invite, the Nuttycombe invite, and like a kind of lacking Pac-12 conference, they weren't that good. Like the average out is it's not the 8th place finish that they saw at the national meet. It's the average of their season. And so do I think Cole Sprout's like one of the most like naturally gifted like runners in terms of pedigree? Yeah, he's awesome. Like he's great. He has never finished inside the top. He hasn't finished inside the top 80 in the last like 3 national meets. So what, fall 2021, fall 2022. Yeah, he has not finished in the top 80 in the past 3 national meets. So
Yeah. So just some new names that we haven't seen that hey, maybe they buoy this team more than we expect. Paul Bergeron, he I think was TSR number 15 in our high school rankings. You have James Dargan coming over from the UK, really good PRs, 804 in the 3K, 1403 5K. Maybe these guys bring a little bit more of a lift. They also have, I mean, you could go down a line. They have a really good recruiting class. I
yeah,
think
I mean,
that's where you can convince yourself, hey, this is how they are better than expected. But looking at the guys that we've seen in years past, it's hard to feel real confident that you know where they're going to land.
that's my thing. Like, do I think they have the talent to be a 12th place team?
I think they could be a top 10 team. Like if all goes well, I think like based off the pedigree of their young guys and like, let's say the Youngs take a step forward, like, and are like near top 50 runners. Like I think this absolutely could be a top 10 team. I just, and so, I mean, they're just one of the more high variance teams. Like they could end up finishing 26th if things don't go well. But I truly do think they could finish in the top 10 if things break right.
Yeah, and I don't think two recruits you didn't even mention, Patrick Kuhn and Byron Drevius. I'm not sure how to say that. Both top 20 recruits in our rankings. So,
Yeah.
it's like those guys are really legit. Like they're going to find a freshman scorer. It's the matter of like how impactful is that freshman scorer going to be? Um, Robinson made up so much of that scoring. Now,
Oh
if
yeah.
Cole Sprout replaces it, then okay, great.
I mean,
Like we
I would be
hope
shocked.
it would. The recent trends are not great, but I
I mean,
want him to be so bad. I
he could
want him
finish
to be
top
so
20.
good.
He could finish top 20. I just don't think like to get where Robinson was is like that. I mean, top 5 that I don't think is necessarily uh, a possibility.
No, I'm not saying maybe not top 5, but I just want him to be back in top 4.
Yes.
I
Agreed.
root like he's so much fun. He's so good. So, all right, that's it. That's it. I'm done with Stanford. Sorry.
All right. At number 17 on the women's side, we have California Baptist. Do you want to do your disclaimer here?
Yeah, sorry. A lot of those women are not there anymore, and we thought that they were going to stay. Greta Karaneske is leaving, their top scorer from last year. Abby Refos is leaving. She wasn't a top scorer, but she ran 15:25 in the 5K this past summer. Tough loss. And then they lost pretty much all their support scores except Yasna Petrova and like who was potentially an All-American this fall, and
Yeah.
a few other elite scorers. They're not a ranked team. Sorry, we thought that they would be. They're not. We're moving on. So
New coaching staff as well.
yeah,
Coach going to alma mater at Georgia. So yeah, there's a lot of another program in transition that we're just gonna have to see who's in this lineup. And they almost certainly will not live up to this ranking because of all the women that are going to be missing. And like you said, if we had known that, this is not where they would have been.
yep.
Let's go on to the number 16 team on the men's side, and that is the Villanova Wildcats. So, really interesting team last year. Yeah, they had kind of a two-headed monster, and then you had Marco Langon, who was also kind of right on the edge of that group as well, and that is Liam Murphy and Haftu Strinsos. Strinsos gone this year. Uh, if Langone can kind of pair up a little bit closer to Murphy this year, then all of a sudden this team looks a lot more potent. They do lose some their back end scorers or back end lineup runners as well. Zion Shifley is someone that comes to mind. They do have options in the back end to fill those roles. Devin Comer, Sean Donahue, Ben Thomas coming in from Australia. It's just hard to say who's going to be who's going to step up. How well are they going to fill those roles? I don't have a ton of like confidence that we know how good this team could be, but they have the potential, they have the options, and you feel pretty good about their top 2. And ultimately, compared to a lot of teams around them in this ranking, that's enough to make us feel pretty comfortable at the 16th spot.
Feel really good about the top 2. Like it's just more firepower than what Stanford's going to have comparatively.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, okay, but Stanford's core of their team, like their support and their impact scores in the middle of the lineup are going to be way better than what Villanova has. And I'd say fine, but 2 low sticks plus some really good recruits, even if there's a significant drop off, and I trust Devin Comer to be a 3rd or 4th scorer for this
Yeah.
team as well. If you piece enough of that together, you're going to be okay. The catch is that if Marcus O'Sullivan says, you and you are all redshirted like he usually does. Not great, but I don't think he's going to have a choice. I think he's going to have to not redshirt 1 or 2 of these guys if they want to have a competitive top 5 this fall and compete back for the Big East title, which they're going to have to win because Butler is now not, they're going to try to have to build around a Butler team that looks really good right now.
Yep.
So it's a weird lineup, but they can do it. And I don't know if it's going to be pretty, but it's going to be pretty enough. And I think that's what matters.
Who are you most excited about besides the top 3 that we just mentioned there?
Um, Fenlon, Jack Fenlon from Ireland. And is he Irish? Yeah, yeah, Ireland. 805 3K, 1401 5K. I'm not convinced Ben Thomas's 337 is going to translate to the grass.
Yeah.
And I think Fenlon has proven to be more of a true aerobic centric guy. And if he's just as he is now, he'll get away as a passable fourth scorer, which for what they need is fine.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Jack Coomer is also Australian guy who could come in and possibly give some depth. 1410 5K PR. We'll see if he runs this fall, but certainly a lot of names to keep an eye on and see who pops. And in some of these like warm up races that we see early in the year, if you see one or two of these guys run and run well, then I think all of a sudden Villanova looks that much more potent moving forward. On the women's side, at the number 16 spot, we have the Arkansas Razorbacks. Again, a team that has gone over a lot of flux over the last couple of years, but they do return a good group of women who have really taken a nice step forward over the last year or so, and that is Sydney Thorvaldsen, Peyton O, who was fantastic in her freshman year, and Mia Cochran. Outside of that, what are we going to see from this team?
I don't know if they're going to field a team, Ben. I mean, it's gone. And like Thorvaldsen and Noe are going to be one of the best 1-2 punches in the country. Yeah. They're fun, awesome, high upside sophomore with, really strong veteran who's proven herself. Mia Cochran, I think, is one of the more underrated third scorers in the country. But losing to Borda really hurts. She was way better last fall, yes, especially in the postseason, than some people realize. That really hurts. And then Mariellen Udele was just good enough to get by. So in terms of, trying to find the depth, this team's going to have to be, I don't know what they're going to do. Like Mackenzie Rogers is a 10-15 steeplechaser. She's going to have to step in. After that, I have no idea what they do. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a program that's been able to develop talent. They usually do bring in like one or two more established names, which is kind of surprising that they didn't do that this year, considering they do have a good like front three, and they just need some capable runners behind them. And so I am surprised that they didn't do that. You can take that one of two ways. A, they just struck out, or two, they maybe have more confidence in women returning than we do because they've seen them in practice. They just have, they know more than we do about them. It's probably a combination of the both in some ways, why they didn't bring in anybody. But I think you do have a little bit of faith in just, hey, Arkansas, they know what they're doing. This is a team that's been ranked much higher and finished much higher than this in years past. They should be able to piece together enough to at least be around a top 15 team.
It's not going to. It's not going to be like I'm a little worried. Like Mackenzie Rogers could single-handedly save this team.
Yeah,
10-15 in the steeplechase, and then she improves after another year of development is crucial. But yeah, I've never seen a team this close to our top 15 that has such a little depth at all. Yep. The bottom four from last year is gone entirety. So, All right. So that's it though. That's all we got for now.
Yep. We've hit our 16 mark. We will be back next week with another set of teams to go through. We're just focused on team rankings, no Olympics, no 15 other things going on. It's nice to be able to talk about the team rankings and get excited for the upcoming season, which is going to be starting very soon. We are getting very close to that first week of meets where there's admittedly not any really big meets, but there are meets coming up in the next couple of weeks, which is exciting. Anything you want to plug before we sign off?
Go to the site, get a subscription. It's a lot of fun. Really enjoy these articles. A lot of people do. It's it's the best time of the year for the site. YouTube, subscribe, please. Ratings and reviews. Thank you to everyone who did that. Am I missing anything? I don't think I am. That's it. That's all I've got.
All right. Well, until next week, Garrett, I'll talk to you.